She showed up to a blind date dressed like a beggar, but the CEO sitting across fell in love at first. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Lena Moore stands just outside the restaurant doors, fingers curled inside the sleeves of a threadbare coat she chose on purpose, the kind with a loose button and frayed cuff that makes people decide things about you before you speak. Inside, warm light spills across white tablecloths and polished glass, and for a brief second she considers turning around, but she doesn't. She promised herself she would see this through. The hostess smiles politely, eyes flicking down and back up again, and leads Lena past couples leaning close, past laughter that sounds expensive, to a small table near the back. Across from it sits a man in a dark tailored jacket, posture straight, phone face down, expression neutral in the way men learn when they're used to being in control. Ethan Caldwell looks up. He takes her in, not rudely, not kindly, just completely, and Lena feels that familiar tightening in her chest, the moment when she knows exactly what version of herself the world is seeing. She sits anyway. She says hello first, voice steady despite the quiet pounding in her ears. He answers, calm, measured, surprised but not offended. There is a pause, the kind that stretches long enough to expose every assumption hanging between two strangers. The waiter arrives, asking for drinks, and Ethan orders a glass of wine without looking at the menu. Lena asks for water, not because she can't afford more, but because she wants nothing to hide behind. When the waiter leaves, Ethan finally speaks, asking if she had trouble finding the place. It's an ordinary question, yet something in his tone makes it feel like an opening. Lena tells him the truth, that she almost didn't come, that she nearly turned around outside. He nods, as if he understands more than she said. He doesn't ask about her coat. He doesn't apologize for his suit. Instead, he waits. And in that waiting, something shifts. Lena notices his hands resting on the table, steady, unadorned by rings, notices how his eyes don't drift to his phone. She tells herself not to read into it. People stay for many reasons. Across the room, a laugh bursts out, sharp and bright, then fades. The world continues, indifferent. Ethan asks what she does. Lena hesitates, then answers simply, without polishing the edges. She watches his reaction closely, bracing for the flicker of disappointment she knows so well. It doesn't come. What comes instead is curiosity, quiet and genuine. He leans back slightly, as if giving her space, and says he works in business, leaving it at that. Another small choice. Another withheld truth. Neither of them knows yet how heavy these small choices will become. For now, there is only the table, the low hum of voices, and the strange, unsettling fact that he hasn't stood up to leave. He studies her face as if committing it to memory, not the polished kind he usually forgets, but the honest lines of someone bracing for judgment. Lena feels exposed, yet oddly calm, as though the test has already begun and the result no longer frightens her. Somewhere deep inside, she recognizes the danger of this moment, the way a single decision can tilt an entire life. If he stays, everything changes. If he leaves, nothing does. She lifts her glass of water, takes one careful sip, and waits, unaware that across from her, Ethan is making the first choice he cannot later undo. Tonight, silence feels louder than promises, and somehow infinitely more intimate. Lena does not notice the time passing until the waiter returns to refill her glass, the water cold against her fingertips, grounding her in a moment that feels strangely suspended. She realizes then that this is the longest she has ever stayed at a first meeting without pretending to be someone else. Across from her, Ethan listens without interruption as she talks about her day, about the odd jobs that fill her weeks, about how she once believed life would look different by now. She does not mention the gallery that never opened or the sketches tucked away in a drawer she rarely opens anymore. Some things feel too fragile for a table between strangers. Ethan responds carefully, as if every word has weight. He asks questions that do not pry but invite, and Lena finds herself answering before she can stop herself. She tells him she almost canceled the date because she was tired of the way people looked at her when they thought they understood her story from a glance. He does not rush to reassure her. He simply nods, as though he has seen that look too, from the other side of the divide. The food arrives, plated beautifully, untouched for a moment as both of them hesitate, caught in the unfamiliar rhythm of mutual attention. Ethan asks why she chose this place, and Lena admits she did not. A friend insisted, said it would be good for her to try something different. Ethan smiles faintly, the first real crack in his composure, and says he understands friends who push too hard. There is a subtle shift then, something warmer, something almost dangerous in its ease. Lena notices how his voice softens when he speaks about work, how he keeps his answers vague, not evasive, just contained. She senses he is used to being known for something specific, something that arrives before he does. That recognition surprises her, unsettles her, because it mirrors her own in an inverted way. As they eat, a couple at a nearby table laughs loudly, drawing attention, and for a second Lena feels the old instinct to shrink, to fold herself inward. Ethan notices. He does not comment, but he adjusts his chair slightly closer, a small movement that feels intentional. It is not protection. It is presence. She breathes easier without knowing why. He tells her he almost did not come either, that he considered sending a polite message and calling it a night. Lena looks up sharply, meeting his eyes. There is no judgment there, only honesty. She wonders what stopped him. He says sometimes it is important to stay when it would be easier to leave. The words land softly, but they echo. Lena thinks of all the times she left first to save herself the trouble. She thinks of the coat on her shoulders, chosen as armor, and wonders if she has underestimated the cost of being seen. The conversation drifts to smaller things, favorite places in the city, quiet streets that feel untouched by ambition, the comfort of walking without a destination. Ethan admits he rarely walks anywhere without a purpose. Lena smiles, imagining him trying to disappear into a crowd. She teases him gently, surprised at her own boldness. He takes it easily, even seems to welcome it. When the check arrives, there is a brief pause. Ethan reaches for it, then stops, looking at her as if asking permission. Lena nods once, not wanting to turn the moment into a statement. As they stand to leave, the space between them feels charged, undefined. At the door, he hesitates, then asks if he might see her again. The question is simple, but Lena hears the risk beneath it. She says yes before doubt can intervene. Outside, the night air is cool, the city humming around them. They part without touching, without promises, yet Lena walks away with the unsettling sense that something irreversible has begun. She does not know his title or his world. He does not know the full weight of hers. What they know, standing under the streetlights, is that neither of them left when they could have, and that choice lingers, asking to be answered again. Lena expects the days after the dinner to blur back into their usual shape, but instead they sharpen, each one edged with anticipation she refuses to name. Ethan texts the next morning, not immediately, not dramatically, just a simple message asking if she slept well and suggesting coffee later in the week. She rereads it twice before answering, careful not to sound eager, though her chest warms at the thought of seeing him again without the shelter of dim lights and polite formality. They meet on a quiet street near a small cafe that smells like roasted beans and rain-soaked pavement, and Lena arrives early out of habit, choosing a seat by the window where she can watch people pass. When Ethan walks in, dressed casually this time, she notices how different he looks without the armor of his tailored jacket, how his presence still seems to rearrange the room. They greet each other with a brief smile, restrained, as if both are aware that something fragile is forming and neither wants to rush it. Over coffee, the conversation deepens in subtle ways. Ethan asks about her childhood, about the places she felt most herself, and Lena surprises herself by answering honestly. She tells him about long afternoons spent sketching in silence, about how drawing once felt like breathing until life demanded something louder, something more practical. She laughs it off, but Ethan listens closely, as though cataloging every word. He shares pieces of his own story, carefully chosen fragments about growing up with expectations that left little room for failure, about learning early how to perform competence until it became second nature. He does not mention success by name, yet it hangs between them, an invisible weight. As they talk, Lena becomes acutely aware of the difference in their worlds. His phone buzzes with messages he silences without looking. She imagines meetings and decisions that ripple outward, while her own days feel small, contained. The imbalance unsettles her, even as she feels drawn closer. After coffee, they walk together without deciding where to go, drifting through side streets where the city feels quieter, more forgiving. Ethan seems almost relieved by the lack of direction, and Lena realizes how rarely he allows himself to wander. She points out a bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a closed bakery, a place she loves for its creaking floors and uneven shelves. Inside, they browse without speaking much, sharing glances over dog-eared paperbacks, the intimacy of silence returning. Ethan picks up a book of essays, surprised by the marginal notes left by previous readers. Lena tells him she likes knowing someone else once cared enough to argue with the page. He smiles at that, a genuine, unguarded expression that lingers. Outside again, the afternoon light slants low, and Ethan checks his watch with a flicker of regret. He admits he has to leave for a commitment he cannot postpone. Lena nods, masking the disappointment that rises unbidden. She tells herself this is how it works, how his life works, intersecting briefly before moving on. Before parting, Ethan hesitates, then asks if she would like to join him at an event later that week, something public, something important to him. The invitation feels heavier than it should, charged with implications Lena cannot yet articulate. She asks what kind of event. He answers vaguely, a gathering connected to work, and assures her there is no pressure. She senses the gap widening again, the return of roles she does not fully understand. Still, she agrees, curiosity and something deeper guiding her response. As they separate, Lena walks home alone, her thoughts tangled. She wonders what version of herself she should bring into his world, whether the woman in the worn coat is enough beyond the quiet safety of a cafe. Across town, Ethan sits in the back of a car, watching the city slide past, aware that he has crossed an invisible line. Inviting Lena into his public life feels like a risk he has avoided for years, yet the thought of leaving her on the margins feels worse. Neither of them speaks of it, but the next meeting looms, promising a collision neither can fully anticipate, pulling them toward a truth that has been waiting just out of sight. Lena spends the day of the event moving through her small apartment with a restless energy she cannot settle, touching objects without purpose, standing by the window longer than necessary, trying to decide which version of herself belongs in Ethan's world. She chooses simple clothes, clean but unremarkable, nothing that asks for attention, nothing that hides either. When she arrives at the venue that evening, the building itself makes her pause, all glass and steel, rising like a statement against the darkening sky. Inside, the air hums with confidence, with conversations layered in ambition and ease, and Lena feels the familiar prickle of being out of place return. She gives her name to the attendant, who checks a list and nods, handing her a badge without comment. And Lena exhales slowly, grounding herself. She spots Ethan across the room almost immediately, not because he stands out visually, but because people seem to orient themselves toward him, turning slightly, leaning in. He looks different here, composed in a way that feels practiced, and when his eyes meet hers, there is a flicker of relief that softens his expression before he moves toward her. He thanks her for coming, his voice lower than the surrounding chatter, and asks if she is comfortable. Lena answers honestly that she is not sure yet, and he smiles faintly, appreciating the candor. As they walk together, he introduces her to a few people, keeping the descriptions minimal, allowing her space to speak if she wants to, never forcing her forward. She notices how attentively others listen to him, how quickly they respond to his words, and the imbalance she sensed before sharpens into clarity. This is not just confidence. This is authority. A presentation begins, lights dimming, and they take seats near the back. On the stage, speakers talk about innovation and impact, about shaping the future, and Lena listens, struck by how abstract it all sounds compared to the weight of everyday survival she knows so well. When Ethan's name appears on the screen as part of the program, her breath catches. She turns to him, searching his face, but he watches the stage, jaw set, as if bracing himself. The applause that follows is immediate, enthusiastic, and Lena feels suddenly exposed, aware that she is sitting beside someone whose life operates on a scale she has never touched. When Ethan stands to join the others on stage, he hesitates just long enough to glance back at her, an unspoken question passing between them. She nods, encouraging him, though uncertainty coils in her stomach. From her seat, she watches him speak with measured assurance, commanding the room with ease. This is the man he did not show her at dinner, not because it is false, but because it carries consequences. Around her, people whisper his name, praise his leadership, recount his successes, and Lena realizes that she has walked into a version of him that cannot exist quietly. After the presentation, the room swells again with conversation. Ethan returns to her side, asking if she would like to leave early. She considers it, tempted by escape, but shakes her head. She wants to understand what she is feeling before she runs from it. They move to a quieter corner, and Lena finally speaks the question that has been forming. She asks why he did not tell her. Ethan does not deflect. He tells her he wanted to be known without the weight of his title, that he wanted one space where he could simply sit across from someone without expectations attached. Lena listens, torn between empathy and a rising sense of vulnerability. She admits that she came to their first meeting stripped of polish for the same reason, to see who would stay when there was nothing to gain. The symmetry surprises them both. Yet the difference remains. His concealment protected him. Hers exposed her. The realization settles heavily. Ethan reaches for her hand, then stops, respecting the distance she has instinctively placed between them. He says quietly that he understands if this changes things. Lena looks around the room once more, at the world he inhabits so fully, and feels the weight of a choice pressing down on her. Whatever she decides next will alter the shape of what they are becoming, and she is not yet ready to choose, knowing only that the truth, once revealed, cannot be folded away again. Lena does not see Ethan for several days after the event, and the absence feels heavier than she expects, not dramatic, just persistent, like a low-pressure system settling over her routine. She returns to her usual rhythm of early mornings and long walks, of temporary jobs and quiet evenings, yet everything feels slightly misaligned, as if her internal compass has been nudged off-center. When Ethan finally reaches out, his message is careful, asking if she would like to meet without expectations, without explanations, just to walk. She agrees, telling herself that clarity requires proximity. They meet near the river at dusk, the water reflecting the last light of day, and for a while they walk side by side without speaking. The silence is not awkward, but it is weighted, carrying everything left unsaid from the night. She learned his name carried power beyond a business card. Ethan eventually breaks it, acknowledging that he should have told her sooner, that withholding the truth felt safer than risking her reaction. Lena listens, hands tucked into her pockets, feeling the familiar pull between understanding and self-protection. She tells him she is not angry, not exactly, but unsettled, because the choice he made had consequences she did not get to weigh. Ethan accepts that without defense. They walk farther, the city noise fading, replaced by the soft rush of water. He asks about her art again, not as a polite interest this time, but with a seriousness that makes Lena pause. She admits she has not drawn in months, that creativity became complicated when survival took priority. Ethan does not offer solutions. He simply says he would like to see her sketches someday, if she ever wants to share them. The absence of pressure surprises her. Over the next weeks, their meetings become quieter, more deliberate. Coffee turns into walks into shared meals cooked simply at her apartment or ordered in without ceremony. Ethan leaves his phone face down more often now, silencing it without explanation. Lena notices the effort, the conscious choosing of presence, and it softens something in her. Still, the gap between their lives remains, surfacing, in small, unavoidable ways. A driver waits outside while she locks her door. A meeting runs late and interrupts dinner. Each moment reminds her that this connection exists alongside a world that will always demand more of him. One evening, Lena finally invites Ethan inside fully, showing him the drawer where her sketchbooks are hidden. He flips through them slowly, reverently, as if handling something fragile. The drawings are raw, unfinished, full of lines that speak more honestly than she ever has allowed. Ethan does not praise them extravagantly. He tells her they feel alive, that they make him see the city differently. The sincerity in his voice unsettles her more than flattery ever could. As their closeness deepens, so does Lena's awareness of the risk she is taking. Being seen by him now means being seen by his world eventually, and she is not sure she wants that exposure. Ethan senses her hesitation. One night, standing on her fire escape under a sky washed with city light, he tells her he does not expect her to adapt to his life, that he is learning how to step back, how to let parts of it go. The confession is quiet, almost tentative, and Lena realizes how rare it is for someone like him to admit uncertainty. She feels the slow burn of something real, something earned through patience rather than spectacle. Yet doubt persists, fueled by the knowledge that affection does not erase imbalance. Lena wonders if love can exist without cost, or if she will always be the one adjusting, absorbing the weight of difference. The thought follows her into sleep, into mornings where Ethan's presence feels both grounding and precarious. As weeks pass, the question remains unanswered, hovering between them, shaping every shared glance and restrained touch. They are closer than before, bound by choice rather than accident, but the tension has not dissolved. It has simply transformed, sharpening into something that demands resolution, promising that the next step, whatever it is, will require more courage than either has yet shown. Lena notices the turning point not as a single dramatic moment, but as a quiet accumulation, a sense that the careful balance they have maintained can no longer hold without shifting into something more honest. It happens on an ordinary afternoon when Ethan comes by unannounced, not with urgency, but with a softness that tells her he has already made a decision. They sit on opposite ends of her small couch, the space between them charged with everything they have avoided naming. Ethan speaks first, telling her that he has been thinking about the night they met, about how close he came to leaving when he saw her at the table, and how the fact that he did not still unsettles him. Lena listens without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, feeling the weight of his admission. He says he stayed because something in her presence felt real in a way he had not experienced in years, because she did not perform for him, because she seemed prepared for rejection and unafraid of it. The words are sincere, but they sting, carrying the implication that her vulnerability was something he could observe safely from a place of power. Lena takes a breath, steadying herself, and tells him the truth she has been holding back. She explains that she chose to arrive at their first meeting dressed the way she did not to deceive him, but to protect herself, to filter out anyone who would only see her worth when it was polished and approved. She tells him that walking into that restaurant felt like stepping into a test she had already failed too many times, and that when he stayed, it mattered more than he knows. Ethan absorbs this, his expression shifting from understanding to something closer to regret. He admits that while he wanted to be known without his title, he never risked being diminished by the choice, that he could always reclaim his position if things went wrong. Lena acknowledges this without accusation, but her voice trembles slightly as she tells him that she does not have that safety net, that being seen without armor carries consequences she lives with every day. The room feels smaller as the truth settles between them. Ethan moves closer, careful, asking what she needs from him now. The question hangs, heavy with possibility. Lena does not answer immediately. She looks around her apartment, at the evidence of a life built on resilience rather than ambition, and realizes that what she needs is not reassurance or rescue, but respect for the boundaries she has drawn to survive. She tells Ethan that she cannot be an experiment or a retreat from his world, that if they continue, it must be with full awareness of the imbalance between them, without pretending it does not exist. Ethan nods, listening, and for the first time she sees uncertainty strip him of his usual confidence. He tells her he does not want to be someone who takes without giving space in return, that he is willing to confront the discomfort of change if it means meeting her where she stands. The admission feels like a risk, not because it promises an easy resolution, but because it exposes him to refusal. Lena feels the emotional shift then, the moment where staying silent would be easier but less honest. She tells him that she needs time to decide whether trust can grow without erasing herself, whether she can step closer without losing ground. Ethan accepts this, standing to leave without protest, respecting the boundaries she has set. Before he goes, he pauses, looking at her with a vulnerability she has not seen before, and says that regardless of her decision, He is grateful she allowed him to see the world from her vantage point, even briefly. When the door closes behind him, Lena sinks back into the couch, heart racing, aware that something irreversible has occurred. She has spoken her truth without softening it, and in doing so, she has altered the trajectory of whatever they are becoming. The choice ahead feels daunting, but it is hers, shaped by clarity rather than fear. Outside, Ethan walks away slowly, the city noise rushing back in, understanding that the connection he values now depends on patience and humility rather than control. Neither of them knows what comes next, only that the moment has shifted from possibility to consequence, and that the path forward will demand more than either expected, promising a reckoning that cannot be postponed much longer. Lena expects distance after Ethan leaves that night, and for a brief moment, she almost welcomes it, believing space will steady her thoughts, but the world does not pause to accommodate careful decisions. The shift comes unexpectedly at a charity gala. She is working as temporary staff, a long night of polite smiles and trays balanced carefully through crowds dressed in confidence. She did not know Ethan would be there. She only realizes it when murmurs ripple through the room, when attention subtly reorients, and she hears his name spoken with familiarity and admiration. Her chest tightens, not with longing, but with the sharp awareness of being seen in a role she did not choose. From across the room, Ethan notices her almost immediately, surprise flashing across his face before he reins it in, professionalism snapping back into place. For a moment their eyes meet, and the intimacy they cultivated in private feels suddenly exposed, fragile under the weight of public space. Lena looks away first, focusing on her task, reminding herself that this is not her story to claim here. But the tension follows her, humming beneath the surface as guests comment casually, unaware of the quiet collision unfolding. As the evening progresses, snippets of conversation reach her, fragments that twist uncomfortably. Someone mentions Ethan's rumored relationships, spoken of like strategic alliances rather than human connections. Another guest jokes about how easily he commands loyalty, how rare it is for anyone to truly challenge him. Lena feels the words settle like a verdict, reinforcing fears she has tried to dismiss. When Ethan finally approaches her, it is discreet, respectful, yet the power imbalance is impossible to ignore. He asks if they can talk later, somewhere quieter. Lena hesitates, aware of the eyes around them, the assumptions forming without her consent. She agrees, but the knot in her stomach tightens. In a side corridor away from the crowd, the conversation turns brittle. Ethan explains he did not know she would be working the event, that he would have warned her if he had. Lena hears the apology but feels the deeper ache of realization that his life intersects with hers in ways she cannot control. She tells him quietly that being here like this makes her feel invisible again, reduced to a background presence in his world. Ethan listens, frustration flickering not at her, but at the situation, yet his instinct to fix, to smooth things over, only deepens the divide. He suggests solutions too quickly, offers reassurances that sound hollow against the lived reality of their difference. Lena finally stops him, her voice low but steady, saying that what hurts is not the misunderstanding, but the inevitability of moments like this. She asks how many times she will be asked to adapt, to explain herself, to exist quietly alongside his public life. The question lands heavily, and Ethan has no immediate answer. The interruption comes suddenly when a colleague calls for Ethan, urgent, reminding him of obligations he cannot postpone. The choice is implicit, and though he hesitates, duty pulls him away. Lena watches him go, the echo of his footsteps amplifying the sense of separation she has been fighting to articulate. The gala continues around her, indifferent, and she finishes her shift with practiced composure, though her thoughts churn. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Lena replays the evening, recognizing that affection alone cannot bridge the structural gap between their worlds. She drafts a message to Ethan, deletes it, drafts another, searching for words that do not accuse yet protect her dignity. She wonders if love that requires constant translation is sustainable, or if it erodes the self slowly, imperceptibly. Across the city, Ethan sits in his office long after the event ends, staring out at the lights below, replaying the moment he walked away from Lena under pressure he claims to resent. He recognizes the pattern, how easily he defaults to responsibility, how rarely he chooses vulnerability when it costs him publicly. The realization unsettles him more than any criticism. Neither reaches out that night. The silence that follows is heavier than any argument, signaling a fracture that demands resolution. What they have built now stands at a crossroads, shaped by unspoken resentment and unresolved imbalance. And both sense that the next encounter will force a decision neither can avoid, pushing them toward either separation or a reckoning that will change them irrevocably. Lena does not hear from Ethan for days after the gala, and when she does, it is not a message asking for forgiveness or another conversation that circles the same ground, but a single sentence inviting her to meet at a place that means something to her. He does not explain. He does not persuade. Curiosity outweighs caution, and she agrees, arriving at a small neighborhood gallery she once visited alone, the kind of space tucked between ordinary storefronts where art feels provisional and brave. Inside, the lights are low and the air smells faintly of paint and old wood. Lena walks slowly, unsure what she is meant to see, until she recognizes the lines on the wall. They are hers, not copied or polished, but presented exactly as she left them in her sketchbooks, raw and unfinished, each piece labeled simply with her name. Her breath catches as she turns, finding Ethan standing near the entrance, hands at his sides, expression open and unguarded. He tells her quietly that he asked permission from the gallery owner, that he wanted to create a space where her work could exist without explanation or hierarchy, where no one knew his name unless she chose to say it. There are no cameras, no press, no audience waiting to judge. Just her work, breathing on its own terms. Lena feels the weight of the gesture not in its scale, but in its restraint. He did not announce it. He did not brand it. He did not ask for credit. They walked together along the walls, silence punctuated by her recognition of moments she thought no one else would see. Ethan listens as she explains pieces she once dismissed as incomplete, asking questions that reveal attention rather than ownership. When they reach the last drawing, he stops, taking a careful breath. He tells her he has been thinking about what it means to choose differently, to act in ways that do not reinforce the power he carries so easily. He admits that walking away from the gala obligation earlier would have cost him credibility, and that he chose wrong in that moment. The acknowledgement is plain, without justification, and Lena feels something unclench inside her. She tells him that dignity matters more to her than declarations, that what hurt was not the public setting but the private compromise it required of her. Ethan nods, absorbing the truth without trying to reframe it. He takes a card from his pocket, blank on one side, and hands it to her. On the back, there is only a time and a place, nothing else. He says that if she ever wants to show up as herself again, without armor or expectation, he will sit across from her and listen, and that if she never calls, he will respect that too. The offer feels different from before, not a pursuit, but an opening. Lena holds the card, feeling its weight as a choice rather than a promise. She looks around the gallery one last time, aware that this moment is not about reconciliation or romance as spectacle, but about alignment. Ethan steps back, giving her space, and for the first time she sees him relinquish control without retreat. He does not ask what she will decide. He does not reach for her hand. He simply thanks her for trusting him enough to speak honestly, and then he leaves first, the door closing softly behind him. Lena remains, standing among her work, the silence settling into something steady. She slips the card into her pocket, not committing to anything beyond the present clarity. Outside, the city continues, indifferent yet inviting. As she walks home, Lena feels neither relief nor certainty, only the quiet strength of having been met without being managed. Somewhere across town, Ethan sits alone, resisting the impulse to check his phone, understanding that this time the outcome must be hers to choose. The night holds its breath, suspended between what has been repaired and what remains unresolved, leaving a single question echoing in the space between them, not spoken aloud but felt with unmistakable force, waiting to be answered when one of them finally decides to cross the distance again. Lena carries the card for days without looking at it, feeling its presence like a quiet pulse against her thoughts, until one evening she finds herself walking without deciding, feet carrying her toward the place, and time written on the back. The cafe is small, unassuming, the kind of place where no one performs. And when she pushes open the door, Ethan is already there, seated at a corner table, posture relaxed, phone absent, eyes lifting with a calm that tells her he did not expect anything except honesty. She sits across from him, mirroring the moment where everything began, and for a breath, they simply look at each other, acknowledging how far they have come without needing to narrate it. Ethan speaks first, not with explanations, but with gratitude, telling her that learning to wait without control has changed the way he understands himself. Lena listens, aware that the real shift is not in his words, but in his stillness. She tells him she came not because the distance between them vanished, but because she no longer wants fear to decide for her. They talk openly, not about promises, but about boundaries, about what it would mean to move forward without erasing either world. There is no dramatic resolution, only a shared understanding that choice, repeated with care, is what builds something lasting. When they leave the cafe together, it is not as a declaration, but as an agreement to continue with intention. Weeks later, Lena returns to drawing regularly, not for validation, but because the practice feels reclaimed. Ethan attends fewer public events, choosing selectively, learning to say no without apology. They meet where they can, sometimes quietly, sometimes in spaces that challenge them both, navigating the imbalance with conversation rather than denial. One afternoon, Lena returns to the restaurant where they first met, not with Ethan, but alone, sitting at the same table, ordering water again, smiling softly at the memory. She realizes then that the night she dressed like a beggar was never about testing someone else, but about claiming her right to be seen on her own terms. Later, as she and Ethan walk through the city, their hands brush briefly, not clinging, just present, and Lena feels grounded rather than overwhelmed. The ending of their story is not sealed with certainty, but with dignity, the understanding that love does not require spectacle to be real. Sometimes, it begins with someone choosing to stay, then choosing to listen, and finally choosing to change. As you reflect on Lena and Ethan, consider what it means to be seen without armor, to value presence over position, and to recognize that true connection grows where power steps back and respect steps forward. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that worth is not defined by appearance or status, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might need the reminder. Your engagement helps us continue bringing thoughtful, emotional stories like this one to life. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the bravest choice is simply to sit across from someone and stay.